basically, if you don't come from royalty, you don't come from nobility, you're not going to get one of these jobs. But he manages to secure one. They're very, very few for outsiders, poor people, nobodies, that kind of thing. But basically, D'Alembert helps him to secure one, and that's him having that connection is what gets him the position. And so apparently he learns from that. Apparently he learns that it's who you know that helps you a lot, and he actually starts coming under a lot of fire because the dates in here, we're getting really close to the French Revolution, right? Okay, so he is living in a very volatile time period. At one point, he is working, 1785. He is working as an examiner of scholars. That's the name that they give his position, examiner of scholars, for the military. And what happens is he's the one who's testing these people who are going through the military to see whether or not they have good enough math and science background and stuff like that. And he actually tests Napoleon Bonaparte. So an interesting thing happens, and at that point I think Bonaparte's only like 16, maybe 17 years old. They kind of strike up a bit of a friendship. Bonaparte passes his tests, so good for Napoleon, good for Laplace that he doesn't have to flunk him. So that's all good stuff. He passes his tests, and later on, when Napoleon comes to power, he remembers his old friend, and he promotes Laplace to the Minister of Interior. That's a position that Laplace has absolutely no business being in. He has no knowledge whatsoever of how to be an administrator or how to take care of the inside workings of a country, right? But Napoleon gives it to him. He also fires him 6 weeks later. I know. Okay, and instead he says, I'm going to give that position to my brother. So nepotism at its best, right? Okay, so he fires Laplace, but because he's his old friend, he doesn't want to upset him, he says, look, instead what we're going to do is I'm going to make you basically a peer. So you'll be a peer, P-E-E-R, a royal person basically. I'm going to give you a title. That's what he says. So under Napoleon, he becomes Count Laplace. So now you're not a nobody anymore. Okay, now you have a title and you have friends in high places, so to speak. So that'll be good. We like that. Okay, at one point, and he puts him in the Senate, which kind of becomes important because later Laplace will actually be the president of the Senate. So it's going to work out for him there. Yeah. So at some point, Laplace has been writing all this time. So he's writing all of the mechanics of heavenly bodies. And what happens is, this actually is volume 3 that he puts out. He ends up putting out like 5 volumes altogether. And at some point, it will be like 2,000 pages that he writes. And he incorporates in the different volumes all the information about the heavenly bodies that we know. So, for instance, he goes back and he pulls up Newton's gravity theory, and he throws in there Copernicus's theory of how things are revolving in this, or orbiting in the solar system and things like that. So his books will actually be huge when we're finished. But this one, volume 3, he kind of dedicates it to Napoleon, his old friend. And he says, let me see, it's Mechanic Celeste is what this one is called. And he says, look, you're the one, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it's something like, you're the one who is making France its beautiful, powerful self that it is right now, because of course he's trying to conquer the world in the name of France. So, okay, he dedicates this lovely book to Napoleon, and then the Senate will vote later to depose Napoleon. Laplace is the president at that point, but somehow mysteriously manages to not be present for the vote because he doesn't want to have to vote against his buddy, basically, is what it boils down to. And as soon as Napoleon is out of office and the monarchy goes back in, the French monarchy is in control, the royals and all of that, he immediately supports. And at this point, we're at Louis the, I think it's 18th. Yep. 18th. Okay. So he immediately supports the monarchy and tells them, you know, how much he loves them and whatever. And Louis takes this as a sign of loyalty, which is crazy because a couple of years before this, he was dedicating books to Napoleon, so whatever. But he says, okay, you are now Marquis Laplace. Okay. And he appoints him to what's called the Chamber of Peers, which is basically like a governing body for the nobility. Okay. So here he is, a poor guy who was, you know, had no raising hardly at all, basically. Supposed to be a theologian, and he comes up and he becomes Count Laplace, and now he's Marquis Laplace, which is basically like a duke, right? Okay, so we're in that realm of level of nobility. And he just keeps on, because of his changing loyalties, basically, he keeps on managing to work his way up, so to speak, in the system. And of course, at that time, he's not negatively impacted, I guess you would say, by his flip-flopping. But if you look back at it and read current affairs about him, current writings about him, he's criticized a lot for his flip-flopping back and forth nowadays. But back then, they didn't care. Okay, let's see. What's important here? He died almost exactly 100 years after Newton. Same month, same year, not the same day. He was nicknamed the Newton of France because of all of his writings about the celestial bodies and the fact that he used Newton's gravitational forces to talk about those. And he said on his deathbed, "What we know is but a little. What we are ignorant of is immense." Okay. And of course, he's probably right about that. So. There's a little bit more about him, but I'm out of time, so we'll just wrap him up real fast whenever we come back next class period, because we're almost done, and then we'll move on, because I really want to get to Gauss before we end our new material. Yay. All right, I think that's it.